Happy holidays, everybody, and Tony here with my review of Verdi's Macbeth with once again conductor Enrique Mazzolla, which I saw at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. This marks the third time I saw Marie-Ève Signoret's production of Verdi's Macbeth at the Deutsche Oper Berlin because I wanted to see, hear, and witness Kangyoon Shine Lee perform the role of Malcolm. And since Felicia Moore's cold got a little bit worse to the point where she had to let her voice rest, she ended up miming the entire role of Lady Macbeth, with Anna Pirozzi doing all of the singing. So let's start off with Kangyoon Shine Lee as Malcolm. Over the 1 year I first saw him sing the role of Ferrando from Mozart's Così fan tutte at the Hochschule für Musik Hans Eisler Berlin, I already knew that his future was going to be a brilliant one. And with every succeeding role I saw him in, I knew fully well that he was living his best possible future. First of all, I've always loved that beautifully handsome and clearly clarion, light lyric tenor voice that was able to pour out so beautifully and evenly without any flaw whatsoever. He had good squillo, he had a lot of fine legato, and he was a thoroughly disciplined singing actor. There was no wobble whatsoever. It was purely clear singing coming right out of Kangyoon Shine Lee's mouth, and his voice just radiated throughout the theater, thus making the best out of Malcolm, which may not be a huge role as opposed to Macbeth, Lady Macbeth, Banquo, and Macduff, but he's still an integral character, and that was what Kangyoon Shine Lee capitalized on with his performance as Malcolm. Sure, you could argue that he didn't have the additional beefiness or the additional steeliness that I love in many tenors singing Malcolm, such as Gino Sinimbergi, Franco Gitti, William Alvis, Giuliano Bernardi, Antonio Barasorda, Antonio Savastano, and Nicola Martinucci before he accomplished all of these bigger, meatier, spinto/dramatic tenor roles. Especially where the likes of Giuliano Bernardi, William Alvis, and Antonio Barasorda are concerned. However, I still enjoy and admire Kangyoon Shine Lee's great discipline in terms of what he was able to accomplish as Malcolm, and he definitely owned the role tonight, all thanks to his handsomely and elegantly tuned musicianship that managed to make his clear, light lyric tenor voice radiate throughout the theater. So bravo to Kangyoon Shine Lee for his awesome musicianship and for making the best out of Malcolm's role, all thanks to his wonderful discipline and his great sense of style, ease, and absolutely elegant manner. The other highlight was having Anna Pirozzi vocally save the day as Lady Macbeth, with Felicia Moore miming the entire role. I could still give a whole lot of credit to Felicia Moore for how she was able to make Lady Macbeth an elegant yet power-hungry political woman who combines class, sass, style, and elegance, thus making her totally win as an actress. She was able to compose herself extremely well, to the point where I was enthralled with everything she had to accomplish. Even if she were wearing a mask, she was still able to use those gestures to her advantage and managed to play with all of her mimics and gestures extremely well, to the point where I was totally transfixed with her theatrical performance. The vocalist helping Felicia Moore's portrayal of Lady Macbeth was none other than the fine spinto/dramatic coloratura soprano Anna Pirozzi. I say dramatic coloratura/spinto soprano or vice versa because what I've seemed to notice about Signora Anna Pirozzi is that a lot of her roles go astride the dramatic coloratura soprano roles, to the spinto soprano roles, to the more dramatic soprano roles. This is a soprano who has sung Leonora from Il Trovatore, Elisabetta from Roberto Devereux, Luisa Miller from Luisa Miller, and Lucrezia Contarini from I Due Foscari, just to name a few roles that she has done in the dramatic coloratura soprano repertoire. She's also sung a few roles from the spinto soprano repertoire, such as Manon from Manon Lescaut by Puccini, and the dramatic soprano roles of Maddalena di Coigny from Andrea Chenier, Turandot from Turandot, Floria Tosca from Tosca, Lady Macbeth, and Abigail from Nabucco, just to name a few roles that she's done from the dramatic soprano repertoire, and even the more prima donna assoluta roles of Norma from Bellini's Norma, and Aida from Verdi's Aida. And yes, I would even mark Aida as an assoluta part. What I've always admired about Anna Pirozzi was her sizable, vast, and large voice that could be able to ride over an orchestra so well. I've heard clips of her on YouTube and wondered how well that seemingly large voice could hold up live. And as I heard her tonight, even though she did the singing at the side of the stage and not totally replacing Felicia Moore as Lady Macbeth, her voice was legitimately large. It had great presence. It had that strength that I've always loved in many a spinto soprano, dramatic coloratura soprano, or soprano assoluta as a whole that made her vocal presence thoroughly strong, as well as laser sharp, especially when she hits those high notes. Whether she hits a high B or a high C or a D flat, she owns those high notes, and she managed to hit those high notes like a huge laser beam just going right off at me and just shooting right off at me with that great laser beam attack. And she did so with clarity and crystalline clearness, just pouring right out of her mouth. Aside from her laser beam top notes, she also had pretty good moments where she was able to coordinate head voice and chest voice. She was able to take advantage of her coordinated chest tones from time to time, and she was able to sing her lines as clearly and cleanly as possible. If there is one Achilles heel about Anna Pirozzi, is that I really do wish that she could have engaged a lot more with her chest tones and taken a lot more advantage of them, because there were some occasions in which her head voice sounded a little bit on the collapsed side when it should sound a lot fuller and richer in the chest tones. And she also had those moments where she could sing in chest, and there were other moments where she kind of ended up singing mostly in head voice at best and collapsed head voice at worst. Even with those insignificantly tiny inconsistencies here and there, I could still forgive Anna Pirozzi because she is a technically proficient singing actress who is able to make her voice present, who is able to use that large yet flexible voice to her advantage, especially to bolster Felicia Moore's performance as Lady Macbeth, and do so with élan, aplomb, and excellence. The other attribute I've always admired about Anna Pirozzi is how beautifully she was able to handle the coloratura parts. She was able to take great advantage of those flowing legato notes and even attack those quick and speedy staccati with precision, élan, and charisma, thus making her thoroughly win as a singer and someone who boasts quite the huge repertoire combining flexible singing as a dramatic coloratura soprano and that large, meaty voice found in spinto sopranos and dramatic sopranos. And if we're talking chestier voices that I've always loved as Lady Macbeth, I will never ever go wrong with Birgit Nilsson, Maria Callas, Marissa Galvani, Gladys Kochta, Lucy Kelston, Marion Lippert, and Martina Arroyo. And if I'm talking about a great singer who has mastered both the mezzo-soprano roles and the soprano roles, all thanks to that clarion tone and overall clarity of voice, I would never ever dare go wrong with Shirley Verrett, who I'd argue was one of the best interpreters of Lady Macbeth from the 1960s to the 1970s to the 1980s and even to the early 1990s. That was just how much Shirley Verrett owned the role of Lady Macbeth, and I'm pretty sure that Anna Pirozzi would also take some inspiration from Maria Callas and Shirley Verrett to also master those chest tones and not just take advantage of her superb top notes. When all is said and done, Anna Pirozzi was able to rescue the performance by providing such wonderful singing, even with some intermittent results, but she was still a vocal trooper all the way through, and she managed to be a thoroughly disciplined singer, all thanks to how she was able to combine flexible, dramatic coloratura singing with some large and meaty spinto/dramatic soprano singing in everything that she had accomplished as Lady Macbeth. Striking again as the titular anti-hero was Roman Burdenko, and his voice continues to be rather suitable for such an ambitious, bloodthirsty, and thoroughly rough character like Macbeth. Sure, you could still argue that his voice can be a bit on the coarse, crude, and unrefined side, but I'm willing to defend Roman Burdenko in the sense that that roughness of tone, that coarseness, and that crudeness of his voice is quite suitable for a warrior who is so hell-bent on climbing up to that ladder of power and will just kill anybody in his way to do so. That is just how much of a convincing vocal actor Roman Burdenko continues to be. Sure, I still can never go wrong with Lawrence Tibbett, Leonard Warren, Gian-Jacques Mogoelfi, Tito Gobbi, Anselmo Colzani, Aldo Protti, and Silvano Carolli. And lest I forget about Cornell McNeil's overall beefiness and great squealo, and Cheryl Milnes being a total vocal chameleon and thoroughly convincing actor and singer, combined with his peerless musicianship. However, I'm still willing to give Roman Burdenko his props in terms of what he was able to accomplish as Macbeth, and he still did a fine job in making this character come to life, thus using his vocal crudeness and roughness and rawness to make the best out of this character. And he also had some tender moments, such as how he ended Pietà, rispetto, amore with such a nice and controlled vocal tone that made the audience go crazy in the best possible way. So I still gotta give Roman Burdenko his props for what he was able to accomplish as Macbeth. Marco Mimica also struck again as Banco. He continued to have that steady and strong tone that made him a fine basso cantante. He was still as listenable as he's always been, and he continued to make a strong impression on Banco. thus taking advantage of his noble and handsomely elegant stage presence, and doing so in a way that made me thoroughly attracted to him. Attilio Glaza continues to grow in steeliness and absolutely fantastic incision as Macduff. He was thoroughly engaging as a singing actor, and he continued to win me over as Macduff. He had that steely presence that made his voice ring. I could definitely sense a fine future in him in a lot more full lyric tenor roles, especially with the occasional spinto tenor roles, but his true calling is without a doubt the full lyric tenor roles, which he has continued to sing with excellence and outstanding superb quality. So a continuously great bravo to Attilio Glaza for his exceptional performance as Macduff. Maria Vasilevskaya took over as the lady-in-waiting and second spirit, and her creamy and flexible lyric soprano voice that could do some coloratura roles here and there managed to be an absolutely fine treat. She was able to use fine vocal control and made the best out of the lady-in-waiting. Gerard Ferreras struck again as the doctor and the murderer, all thanks to his fine and focused bass baritone voice. Dean Murphy continues to be a handsome and dashing herald, servant, and first spirit. Emil van der See was a clear-toned third spirit, and the acting done by Dana Maria Esch, Hagen Henning, Emil Pier, and Pierre Emeu were absolutely well done. So overall, the singing was really fascinating and absolutely superb, especially where Kangyoon Shine Lee was concerned. He made a great impression as Malcolm, all thanks to his clear clarion and extremely well projected light lyric tenor voice. In fact, I really do see a fine future in this gentleman as Froh from Das Rheingold, David from Die Meistersinger von Nürnberg, the steersman from the Fliegende Holländer, Il Duca di Mantova from Rigoletto, Alfredo from La Traviata, Tonio from La Fille du Régiment, Nemorino from L'Elisir d'Amore, Ernesto from Don Pasquale, and many other superb roles for either a light lyric tenor or a lyric tenor, or even, for that matter, a tenore di grazia or tenore leggero. The future for Kangyoon Shine Lee continues to shine, no pun intended, with a lot of brilliance and excellence. That is just how excited I continue to be for Mr. Kangyoon Shine Lee with everything that he has been accomplishing thus far, and I continue to salute him in every new role that he has been undertaking. Special acknowledgement also has to go to both Anna Pirozzi and her fine vocalism, and Felicia Moore using her mimics and gestures to make the best out of Lady Macbeth, and do so with really great results and interesting results. That Roman Burdenko throwing himself in as a fine and exciting vocal actor as Macbeth, even if some people were to complain about his roughness and rawness and unevenness of voice, but I'm still willing to defend Roman Burdenko for what he was able to accomplish as a singing actor, as he was able to make the best out of that rough, crude yet exciting voice of his to make Macbeth a thoroughly interesting and distinct character. Marco Mimiza's noble Banco continuing to be an absolutely fine asset. Attilio Glaza continuing to be an absolutely outstanding and superbly magnificent tenor as Macduff, and the fine jobs accomplished by Maria Vasilevskaya, Gerard Ferreras, Dean Murphy, and Emil van der See in the roles of the lady-in-waiting, the doctor and the murderer, the servant and the herald, and the third spirit. Everybody did an amazing job vocally and theatrically, and I would never ever forget the efforts accomplished by Dana Maria Esch, Hagen Henning, Emil Pier, and Pierre Emme for doing such fine jobs and contributing quite well to this entire production. The conducting done by Enrique Mazzolla was continuously brisk as well as sufficiently exciting. Sure, there were moments in this performance that he did kind of drag, and that there were times that the singers and him were a little bit out of sync, but he still managed to push through and still continued to give such a nuanced musical performance, especially when he helped that orchestra get into shape and do so with such flair. And the chorus and the orchestra of the Deutsche Oper Berlin are usually reliable. Even when there were slight stumbles, they all managed to pick themselves back up again and continue to soldier on with a whole lot of strength and equally great amounts of excitement. So overall, Kangyoon Shine Lee's performance as Malcolm proves that even though this character might be quite small, it is still greatly important to the grand scheme of the entire story. That is just how much Malcolm's role continues to be impactful, not only to the entire story of Macbeth, but to any tenor singing this small yet really important role. And Kangyoon Shine Lee was an absolute star and did so with great elan and excellence. And I still have to give my hat off to Anna Pirozzi for also saving the show vocally, especially when she was bolstering Felicia Moore's portrayal of Lady Macbeth, considering the state of Miss Moore's cold to the point where Signora Pirozzi saved the day vocally. And should Felicia Moore not recover from this cold, I wish her well, and I hope that she gets well soon for the new year. And if Anna Pirozzi took over as Lady Macbeth on November 8th, that would actually be quite interesting, and it would also make me a lot more intrigued to see a lot more of Anna Pirozzi on stage. But if Felicia Moore ends up recovering from her cold and still manages to strike again as Lady Macbeth, then I still wish her all the best, and I still wish her well for a nice, quick, and speedy recovery. The rest of the cast continued to be thoroughly enjoyable to listen to, as well as witness on stage. But more than anybody, I have to give great props to Kangyoon Shine Lee for being a thorough trooper, as well as being a fine, elegant, eloquent, and equally dashing singing actor as Malcolm. And for those of you who caught this performance of Macbeth at the Deutsche Oper Berlin, what'd you think of it? Did you feel that Kangyoon Shine Lee stole the show as Malcolm? And did you also feel that he made the best out of the small yet important role? Did you also feel that Anna Pirozzi did a fine job in taking over vocally as Lady Macbeth, thus bolstering Felicia Moore's performance of this character? Was there another singer you particularly loved, whether it be Roman Burdenko, or Marco Mimica, or Attilio Glaza, or even Maria Vasilevskaya, Gerard Pereira, Steen Murphy, or Emil van der See? Or did you feel like the singing was not really to your liking? Please let me know in the comments below. Well, that's it for my review of Verdi's Macbeth at the Deutsche Oper Berlin starring Kangyoon Shine Lee as Malcolm. Tune in tomorrow for my review of Roderick Williams' concert at the Pierre Boulez Saal. So until then, happy holidays, everybody.